Starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar. Today's webinar is all about automating service desk processes and automating your services. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks as well to our sponsor for today, who's Vivantio. Please do get involved today by taking part in the polls that we've got coming up, letting us know, your input, and also posting your questions for our presenters and our hosts during the sessions. What we'll do is we'll come to all of those questions at the end, and we'll get through as many of them as we can. So I'll hand you straight over to our host for today, who's also going to be presenting as well, who's our Chief Value and Innovation Officer here at SGI. That's David Wright. Hi, David.
Hi Zoe, how are you?
Hi, good, thank you. Thanks for presenting and hosting today. I can see you've already got a slide share going, so I'll hand straight over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. As Zoe mentioned, in conjunction with today's sponsors, Vivantio. My name is David Wright. I'm lucky enough to be part of the Service Desk Institute team, and I'm hosting today's webinar where we'll be discussing refining and automating process. We're a very hot topic actually at the minute, and I think we all know that the service desk has always been one of the busiest parts of any IT service operation, and trying to balance the needs of the business, the needs of the service desk employees, and the needs of the end users can sometimes create an inefficient and productive, even chaotic service, a service environment fixated by firefighting and service apathy. Not a great place to be. So how does the service desk work smarter, not harder? How can it use tools to make service more productive, more effective, more efficient? How much more business value could a service desk create through improving efficiency and productivity? And what steps can a service desk take to increase productivity and efficiency and become the service powerhouse in any organization? Well, today we'll be discussing some of that, exploring what modern service desks should be considering when exploring process automation. Joining me today is Quentin McPhee, Senior ITSM Specialist and Implementation Consultation at Vivantio. Quentin brings over 20 years of experience in the IT industry as a Senior IT Service Management Consultant, complemented with a set of relevant qualifications and extensive experience of ITSM solutions. A proven track record of orchestrating, great word, orchestrating positive organizational change and a background in effective leadership. Welcome, Quentin. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll be joining Quentin a little bit later, where he'll be covering over some of his thoughts about process automation. And as Zoe mentioned, guys, please, listeners, if you have any questions through the webinar, please ask them using the panel, and we'll look to answer as many as we can towards the end of the webinar. Now, before we move on, we do have an audience poll. So I'd like you to, if you could, look at that question that you've got there, which is what percentage of service desk workload is deflected from your first line as a result of service automation. And I'd like you to take a couple of seconds to consider that and answer that, please, the closest to your service desk. So if you could just do that, we'll give some time for you to do that. And Zoe will let us know when we're almost done. How are we looking, Zoe?
We've got just over half, just 60% have voted. We'll give you a few more seconds to get your votes in.
Brilliant.
We're up to 70.
Okay, last few seconds, and guys, if you could just give us your answer to that one, that'd be fantastic. We're almost there, Zoe.
Yeah, nearly there. Shall I close it off there? And
yeah,
we'll
I think
have a look
be
at the
great.
answers. Yeah, okay.
Please, if you could.
Okay, can you see those?
Okay, yeah, I can indeed. So we've got 20% none. That's really interesting, actually. We'll come on to that a little bit later. 20% none. Up to 5%, 43%, between 10 and 20%, 26%, between 20 and 33, and over 39. So very much up to 5% already in place. That's lovely. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you very much for that. I love service desks, and a brilliant service desk is the heartbeat of any really great IT service operation. The service desk is the link between the business and IT. It's the human link between the users of IT services and the business. And as you know, service desks deal with a myriad of day-to-day challenges related to people, process, technology, like diagnosing issues, logging interactions, making sure tickets are passed to the right resolver teams, managing the ticket life cycles while working to meet service level targets, continually improving the service and keeping end users happy. Not an easy job at all, especially when the business and IT, senior IT management may want completely different things. And let's remind ourselves what an effective service desk does that the business might not even know. So as you can see there, service desk aims to facilitate the integration of business processes, actively monitor and own instance requests and questions, providing communication channels for other management disciplines and an interface for other activities. And those other activities are all that stuff. Now that's an awful lot to be involved with, and probably more actually as well. And I wonder sometimes if an organization the service desk supports really understands how much business value an effective service desk can actually offer. I also think it's fair to say that many organizations don't view the service desk as a strategic asset. In many cases, the service desk is simply seen as a cost that needs to be reduced over time. Now, those organizations that do view the service desk as a strategic asset continually improve, invest, and continue to raise the profile of the service desk so they become influencers, supporting critical decision making and becoming leaders of change in IT. And on the whole, I think it's fair to say we've always looked at IT support as a combination of people and technology to fulfill business processes needed to support an organization and its customers. I think it's fair to say that quite often organizations' technology capabilities can't be adapted or developed at the speed that a business requires. So it utilizes people to fill the gaps between technology and process. Now, in many cases, that works well. Certainly in a service desk perspective, as people add value to the process, they interact with customers, they make value calls or interpret data that technology may not be able to understand or contextualize. But in many cases in an IT service environment, people are simply filling gaps, just applying business rules and performing repetitive activities in order to fulfill a process. Now, it could also be argued that IT finds it challenging to keep up with the ever-changing demands and requirements of an organization. It could also be argued that organizations recognize that and employ people again to fill the gaps between the business requirements and what can be delivered by the technology capability in an organization. Now, although that model has been sustainable in the past, the approach is slowly becoming antiquated, out of date, and may no longer meet the needs of business life in the 21st century. So the service desk is human, relying on skills, experience, training, central processes, knowledge management, frameworks, best practice, continual service improvement, and IT service management tools to help deliver service. We know, however, that the service desk has always been a reactive proposition. If something's not working, ring us and we'll fix it. And with the complexities of legacy estates, multiple systems, inefficient workflows, badly managed process change, low-value repetitive work like password resets or repetitive tasks like copy and pasting information, along with asking users to repeat information and having to physically document an interaction, all that human intervention can lead to human error, longer resolution times, lack of service consistency, and a poor end-user experience. So how does the service desk as a proposition become more? There's a lot of talk at the moment about the augmentation of the human agent in a service environment. So the use of new service technology and new tool capability to complement the existing human workforce. And complement is the key word there. So what are we seeing, and how could technology help create real customer-centric service? Well, self-service, self-help, very much the norm now, complementing the traditional voice and email channels. Self-service obviously offers a more automated support channel and offers additional options for users. We certainly find that user adoption of self-service industry-wide is relatively low, and that's in some part a result of how many organizations approach implementation as a cost-saving exercise rather than understanding user demand, promoting the benefits of self-service to user groups, and working with user groups to design and develop a fit-for-service solution. A lot of people used to think that self-service and this kind of service automation would impact on jobs, but That hasn't really been the case, due in some part to adoption rates maybe, but also that self-service is simply just another support channel that complements other support channels. And in many cases, there is still much reliance on human intervention rather than a fully automated solution that reduces the need for human intervention. So that was pretty much the first attempt to encourage end users to become more self-serving and to provide them with a more automated support option, reducing the need for human intervention between process and technology, and turning previously manual processes like password resets, access control, starters and levers into automated multi-tiered workflows, as well as potentially offering automated self-heal and self-help. And automation is moving away from trigger automation like scripts and macros. We're seeing more organizations looking at the benefits of robotic process automation. We're starting to see organizations invest in this technology again to complement human interaction and reduce the need for people to fill the gap between process and technology. And that's done by software robots, a virtual workforce that allows organizations to automate structured, rules-based, repeatable processes. Now, this really is an enterprise approach rather than just an IT thing, so impacting on any business function where business processes like finance, admin, HR, procurement, or customer service exists. So a platform providing a virtual workforce governed and hosted by IT, but configured and controlled by the business. And the benefits to RPA obviously are, accuracy, consistency, right first time, 24/7 availability, and instantly scalable. Now, robotic process automation has the added benefit of releasing human resource from delivering low-value workloads so they can better use their brain power on proactive workloads and focus more on proactively improving service rather than just fulfilling a process. In one case, we've recently seen one organization that was able to realize a cost saving over £1.1 million through robotic process automation. And that was across the business, not just in IT, as obviously we mentioned robotic process automation has the potential to affect efficiencies across an organization. We've also seen organizations very quickly over the last 12 months or so look to invest in tools and technology to support RPA. We've seen new business targets, new strategies being introduced. A few examples come to mind where organizations are looking to improve their service delivery efficiency by making better use of the automation and integration capability in tools and self-service. And these include examples of targeting, automating interaction logging, interaction deflection, and reducing workload volumes. Over the last couple of years, we've seen the rise in chat being used as a support channel, and chat obviously complements telephone, email, and self-service, giving users more support options and support channels that they can select to use as a preference depending on their support needs at any one time. And a chatbot or a service bot, which is probably really a better description for this technology in a service environment, is a conversational chat computer program that interacts directly with the customer without human intervention. And service bots offer a first-line triage support option, providing automated responses to basic customer queries. They can be an extension of self-service, self-help, or knowledge search, providing assisted support using chat conversation as a user interface. So shifting left basic user support needs from humans to software, again, reducing the need for human intervention to deliver a process. Service bots have the potential to help reduce costs, reduce calls to the service desk, and increase first contact resolution for very specific interaction types. Now, I don't know if you've used some of these before, but it's very clear to see that a badly designed service bot creates a very painful service experience very quickly. Unlike with all these technologies, they're only as good as the people who program them and how good the data is that people feed them. So from a user perspective, things like poor onboarding, lit explanation of what a bot does, or things trying to do too much with a single bot, all support bad execution. And badly executed, you run the risk of limited user adoption, limited return on investment, and a very poor customer experience. We're also seeing organizations who have already introduced this kind of technology in service, working technology in service, and also seeing organizations globally introducing strategic targets to implement this technology as part of their top technology roadmaps. Virtual assistants, again, these are voice-based conversational computer programs. They again, interact directly with a customer without the the need for human intervention. They can be accessed through mobile or standalone devices and provide a similar experience as service bots, but using voice-based chat conversation as a user interface. Now, the rise of machine learning and APIs can give this technology the ability to learn from your past choices and usage trends, your user data, which helps offer a more customized, integrated personal experience. So think Amazon Alexa, think Apple Siri, Google Assistant, and Microsoft Cortana, all examples of intelligent personal assistants powered by e-learning. So what does the adoption of this type of technology mean to providing service? Well, if we look forward a bit over the next few years, and as we move into adopting these technologies as service, we still have to remember it's about service delivery, but it's about the service we deliver. It's not about individual tools and technology. It's not just about process automation. It's much, much wider than that. It's actually about service orchestration. And as machine learning and artificial intelligence becomes more sophisticated, we'll see the creation of automated frameworks providing integrated, augmented, cognitive, orchestrated service, robotic and human orchestration in business and the home, augmenting the relationship between people service and technology rather than people process and technology. And that leads into more complex service technology, cognitive computing, and the virtual agent. And cognitive computing aims to bring sensory capabilities to software. It enables apps to see, listen, talk, and even make decisions based on natural language processing, visual recognition, face detection, emotion detection, video analytics, and text-to-speech. And also, obviously, language translation and sentiment analysis. So that means a service solution that senses, comprehends, acts, and adapts in a comparable way to a human brain. So a virtual agent, it'll be able to take unstructured information from an end user and make decisions using natural processing, so understanding language and concepts, then using analytics and knowledge to complete service interactions, orchestrating interactions and workflows between humans, bots, and robotic automation. And also learning skills and new knowledge through interactions and creating answers based on experience rather than the more linear service bot Q&A style or search engine experience. Okay, so that's an awful lot to talk about there. It's an awful lot. We're going to look at some stats now, if that's okay. So Service Desk Institute, we regularly survey our community, and recently we released the latest Analyst 2.0 report, which includes this data. Now, we asked what areas of your service is currently automated. The results saw password resets and account admin as the most automated areas. And interestingly, it was interesting to see only 14% of respondents said they had automated service requests. And even more than that, 21% said they'd automated nothing yet, which is really interesting because that's almost exactly the same figure that we had earlier in the poll. We also asked our customers or the community what percentage of your service could be automated. 35% respondents, that's just over a third of respondents, estimated that between 51% and 75% of the service could be automated. Almost half estimated that 26 to 50% of the service could be automated. So that's an awful lot of potential service improvement opportunity through automation. When asked if users are becoming happier with self-service, a total of 57% of respondents said no, or that they were unsure. Now, that's quite a big number, I think, and 29% of respondents didn't know if their users were happy or not with using self-service. And wow, you know, I find that quite amazing from a customer experience point of view, to be honest with you. However, 43% of respondents said users were becoming happier to use self-service. And I personally still think that's low, taking into account how long self-service has been around. And I'd certainly really be interested in understanding how organizations are trying to improve the user experience and user adoption rates of self-service to create more value. Finally, we established that some 36% of respondents were in some way engaged in exploring or implementing intelligent support channels such as service bots or virtual assistants, and that 64% of respondents had not yet started to look at that technology. However, that is a moving target, and as organizations wake up to the potential of this technology, I'm sure that those statistics are going to change very, very rapidly indeed. Okay, now, Before we invite Quentin to present, we have another audience poll. So you'll see a question there, which is simply, how would you rate your current IT management system's ability to support your service automation needs? And again, please, if you could just take the time to select which answer you think most meets your service, that would be great. But again, we'll give a little bit of time for you to do that. And we'll rely on Zoe just to tell us how far along we are on percentage uptake.
Okay, we've got 60% already, so just another sort of few seconds should do it.
Excellent, thank you very much. So guys, if you could just select an answer, that would be fantastic.
Okay, we're up to 80. Oh, it's still going up. So a couple more seconds, I'll close it off now and I'll share the answers.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got non-existent 14, poor 41. So that's quite a chunk there. Good 43 and 2 excellent. That's really interesting actually, isn't it? 40, 50, 56%. Okay, so 56% poor and non-existent. Thank you, Zoe. Well, some very interesting stats there, and with that in mind, Quentin, I think if I could hand over to you, please, that would be fantastic.
Well, yeah, many thanks, David. Really, really interesting what you were saying there, and thank you everyone else for joining this webinar. The points that I'd like to go through in this part of today's session can be broken down into these broad areas. I'm going to start with a few definitions, just so that we're clear about what we're talking about. Then I'm going to be spending a bit of time describing the approach to building and establishing automated services. That's the business analysis and kind of process definition side of things. Then we'll have a practical look at what are those processes that are well suited to automation. I want to then consider how automated processes can be maintained, and lastly, we'll run through an end-to-end example. So, what is service automation? If we first consider a service is a means of delivering value to our customers without having them to own specific costs or risks. Services are typically packaged and delivered and then incorporated as a part of a process that returns that value. Processes are simply a series of actions and activities done with intent of achieving a particular goal. Automation is the performing of actions and activities with reduced or no human intervention. There are many reasons why reducing human intervention is considered beneficial, and an automated process is more likely to be systematic, that is to say that it's going to be more consistent in its outcomes. An automated process is likely to be a lot quicker. But by far and away the largest perceived benefit of automation is the reduction of costs by reducing the need for people to perform all of those process actions and activities. So in summary, the definitions are: a service is a package that returns value and is often in the context of a process. The process is a series of actions and activities, and automation is the reduction of human intervention in those actions and activities. Okay, I want to talk now about the establishment of automated processes. My background is in service management processes, and most processes supported by service desk toolsets are relatively straightforward, whether they're incident, request, event, change management, that kind of thing. Certainly when compared to some manufacturing processes, these individual life cycles of incidents and requests are comparatively modest. However, since there are a high volume of these service desk tickets passing through a process, the low cost of and also the low cost of introducing automation, these processes lend themselves really well to a refinement and automation. For the most part, customers that I speak to will already have processes in place for the management of these different types of service desk tickets. The first step to establishing more automated processes is to understand the current process. A full-blown business analysis is rarely required. However, we can be mindful of the business analysis steps as we map out the process as it currently is. As we better understand the current process, the as is, we will more easily identify the areas that can be simplified and automated, and so we can define the process that is to be. The first step then is to investigate the current situation for areas of improvement. Typically, I will conduct interviews with the key stakeholders. I'll read through the available documentation. Other techniques that I have used include observation, such as sitting in on a change advisory board meeting, conducting workshops, And these workshops can be considered just simply open agenda interviews with multiple stakeholders. The issuing of questionnaires, another method which is particularly appropriate when stakeholders are spread across a wide geographical area where broad input is required. The output from this investigation can simply be that whoever's conducting that investigation better understand the current process. However, more usually it will be that a document will be part of that output that sketches the number of different views of the process as it currently is, and a number of views of what the to-be will resolve. The next step is to then consider these various different perspectives and resolve any conflicts. At the end of the step, we'll have an agreed definition of what the current process is and what the efficiencies of the to-be process, what its goal will be. Now we start the analyze the needs by performing gap analysis and activity analysis, those good honest BA processes, to document in some detail the options that we have to improve through automation. It's not uncommon for some options to have costs associated with them, but even with no direct costs, we should go through the process of evaluating, creating a shortlist, and producing a business case with recommendations. With the options recorded and prioritized, the requirements to move from the as-is to the to-be can be defined. This requirements definition can be straightforward, but it is going to be a living document which will guide the development of the automation and refinement, and should be subject to the usual documentation, document controls, such as what version we're on, who the authors are, what the changes are, that kind of thing, quite standard. But as well as document control, I tend to find that these requirement definition documents will include other sections, common sections, the purpose, the scope, the assumptions, benefits. Quite often a racing matrix will be included to identify those roles in the to-be process, and often there'll be flow charts, sequence diagrams, swim lane diagrams to graphically represent the new process. Whilst I can't go into too much detail as part of this session, I want to just give a little bit of an example of this requirements definition document. So I've recently worked on introducing an automatic handling of service desk tickets generated from a network monitoring tool. So in this case, in this recent case, the purpose was to improve the timeliness and accuracy of processing and assigning tickets without the involvement of the first tier or service desk team. The scope was for the tickets being generated through the network monitoring solution, and just those ones, those tickets only. One of the assumptions, to give an illustration of the assumptions, this included the reference to the ticket category structure falling under a change management process, as the automation triggers will be dependent on consistently categorized tickets. The benefits, well, the main advantage of the automation piece was to incorporate the new networking monitoring tool and also to assist in meeting really rather tough and contracted SLAs for that particular customer. Okay, areas for automation then. We've considered the steps we might go through to define what changes are needed to introduce a greater level of automation. But I want to break out of this into the next section now and consider what particular processes within a service desk are commonly well suited to automation and refinement. Service desk tickets can represent a variety of different types of work. IT service management best practice, or ITIL, suggests incident, request, event, change management, but we shouldn't feel necessarily constrained by these. Service desk tool says certainly Vivantio is used in a number of different settings, whether it's human resources, payroll, governance, sales, customer service, to name but a few. Suffice to say that service desk tools have in common the fact that they record tasks and work that need to be managed. One of the most common forms of service desk automation is in the creation of tickets. So here I'm referring to the creation of tickets with reduced human intervention. Tickets can be created in a variety of ways, and an agent can create a ticket after having elicited the details from a customer that's phoned up perhaps, or perhaps even walked into reception early. Clearly this is an entirely manual process that requires time and effort from both the customer and the agent. There really is not much automation here at all. A customer can submit their query by email. Although this method does require little initial effort or attention from the agent, it does often have insufficient information included in the original ticket submission, which can lead for greater levels of agent effort further down in the ticket's lifecycle. A ticket can be created as a result of an incoming integration call from an external system, very pertinent for monitoring tools and event management, but can be quite situational. Having increased levels of automated behavior of this type of ticket creation, as integration ticket creation, can be very beneficial. With proper automation, alerts can be closed automatically, reducing the workload from the service desk team and reducing the risk of important work being missed whilst in the mass of less important tickets. Generally, though, the most effective way of creating tickets is for the customer to submit a query through a self-service portal. The customer accesses a self-service portal web page, completes the fields on the web page, and submits the tickets directly into the service desk toolset. In terms of automation, not only is the agent not required to capture the details from the customer, but since the customer can be prompted to complete certain fields along with their submission, such as the type of query or perhaps the category of ticket, then there can be more effective ongoing automation beyond the initial ticket creation. As an example of automation related to tickets submitted through a self-service portal, there could be the routing of tickets immediately to the appropriate resolve group based on the ticket category. Okay then, so now we talked a little bit about ticket creation. Let's go on to the rest of, the ticket's life cycle and considering the business rules over the ticket's entire life cycle. Once a ticket has been submitted into a service desk toolset, there are a variety of automated events and updates that can occur against that ticket. These are controlled through business rules. Effectively, when the conditions of a business rule are met, then the business rule actions will update the ticket. Technically, this will be done by the ticket attributes being continuously monitored. When the attributes meet a certain condition, for example, breaching its SLA, it will fire the action, such as emailing the supervisor. A simple example of the use of business rule relates again to the assignment of tickets. A business rule can have the condition that when a ticket of a particular type or category is accepted, then based on that category, it will be assigned to a corresponding resolver group. This automatic assignment of tickets is common and simple and be a very effective use of the business rules to speed ticket resolution and reduce the need to manually assign work. But it does rely on the ticket being categorized correctly and also a reasonable category structure to begin with. An extension of the business assignment or the assignment business rules could be to assign to individuals rather than simply just resolver groups. The individuals, of course, will be based on which resolver groups they are a part of, but also can be based on their availability. It's typically done in either a round-robin method, that is to say, allocate to the next available agent, or to a weighted method that considers at the time of assignment which of the agents has the least amount of work assigned to them. Business rules do not have to just be related to ticket assignment, obviously. Other ticket attributes can be automatically updated based on the events that occur against that ticket. For example, just a couple of examples, a ticket is in a status of awaiting customer response. In this particular status, the SLA time will be on hold. It could be that it would automatically flip into an open status when it receives an email from the customer. And in so doing, it would improve the accuracy of the SLA metrics. Another example, when a ticket is assigned to a third party, then an automatic outbound integration call can be made to create a ticket in the corresponding third party's service desk solution. So there's a number of different varieties of trigger conditions and actions that can be included. Business rule use can be enhanced by the setting of a delay between the conditions being met and the actions being applied. It would normally make little sense to have a business rule fire when a ticket is moved into an on-hold status to move it straight back into an open status. However, it makes a lot more sense when we do add a time delay. If a ticket moves into an on-hold status and then after a couple of days moves back into an open status, we can see the value in ensuring that tickets are never lost and not attended to in this on-hold status. Another use of time-delayed business rules can be to send satisfaction surveys a day or so after the ticket has been closed, therefore ensuring that the customer, when they do respond, is responding to their full experience. A special type of time-dependent business rule are those rule triggers on the progress of through a ticket's SLA. So we'll be familiar with that, but just very quickly, an SLA is a target time set against a ticket to achieve a certain outcome. Typically, the time will start counting down once the ticket is created, and the outcome will be when the ticket is closed. SLAs will be closely related to the priorities, with high priorities having short SLA timescales and low priorities having longer times to resolve them. So if we consider an 8-hour SLA, then when a business rule can be automatically conduct various actions against that ticket after it's passed through a number of hours of its SLA. Perhaps with just 6 hours left in its SLA, it might notify the owner to say that further action is required. Business rules do need to be programmed into the service desk toolset, but represent an easy and effective way of increasing levels of automation. We've already mentioned the possibility of automatically sending integration calls to external systems, and I'd like to explore a little bit more deeply the very important type of automated action, automatic communications. Email still remains the staple of electronic communications between people and looks to be with us for some time to come. So to have automated outgoing emails from a service desk toolset is really essential to inform customers of updates to their tickets. It is less of a requirement to keep agents informed of updates to their tickets, simply because they'd receive far too many email notifications that they'd be able to usefully manage. And of course, they can always access the service desk tool itself to review any alerts or actions outstanding. When automated emails to internal customers can be most effective is in alerting supervisors, perhaps management, when thresholds of service quality are about to be breached. This type of automated communications really can be effective in improving the proportion of tickets resolved with SLA or other service quality metrics. Also, these automated communications can improve levels of customer satisfaction. Communication with the customer, keeping the customer informed, really is a key part of that customer satisfaction story, and really requires very little effort if it's combined with automation. Okay, just to complement a little bit of what David was saying a little bit earlier about chatbots, I wanted to just quickly talk about those, or offer some of my experience. So, a method of automating communications that have received a lot of attention over the recent years has been AI assistants and chatbots. As was previously stated, a chatbot is a computer program that engages with customers in a conversational style, simulating an interaction between the agent and a customer. But it may be through audio or text, and we talked about some of the leaders in the field already: Microsoft Cortana, Apple Siri, Google Assistant. This technology is still evolving, but some large variety of departments have implemented it in spite of the risks associated with early adoption. Textual chatbots appearing in the self-service portal is where we're going to see the technology start to appear in the service desk environment. And although undoubtedly there will be some performance and cost issues to begin with, when the technology has matured, it really will become I'm sure it will become a popular choice, a popular option for our automation toolkit. If done right, it can be a significant time saving for service desk teams in automating and resolving issues at first touch, or by ensuring tickets are routed to the right team. If done poorly, it will be reminiscent of those early call center days where you get multiple press 1s for this and press 2s for that, which really historically only left customers frustrated and with their issues unresolved. There are circumstances when individuals and teams need to coordinate their activities, and so where workflow really comes in. So these activities are to be coordinated in a prescriptive and systematic way. For these workflows to be effective, automation really is essential. So whether it be the sending of email communications, the auto-updating of ticket details as activities are completed, or the assignment of individual work packages, These are common examples of the kind of actions associated with workflows. But workflows are a great illustration of the typical uses of automation in service desks. We want to reduce the human intervention from each ticket passing through a service desk toolset, but many, if not most, of the tickets will require some human oversight or some human activity. So the automation elements are used to notify stakeholders and prepare the ticket to be in the best possible state, whilst the actual resolving of the ticket, the performing of the actions, still remains within the remit of the agent. Workflows are often improved with the ever higher degrees of automation when compared to less methodical business processes, but this is just a bit of a cautionary tale, I guess, from my experience, they can become complex and unwieldy to support and maintain. And so really starting out with high quality documentation and entering into processes, well-tested workflows really are two essential steps. Okay, then on to testing and release maintenance. We've already discussed the early stages of establishment of more automated processes, namely the as-is and the to-be process definitions. We've then highlighted the circumstances in which automation is most effective at ticket creation or for the use of business rules. And I want to explore those considerations that complete the establishment of more automated processes, in particular the testing, the going live of a new process, the maintenance of that process, and lastly, the evaluation of the effectiveness of the new automation. So testing then. For the type of process automation developed within a service desk tool, I've seen an agile approach to testing and acceptance to be the most effective. That is to say, working collaboratively and closely with those teams that will be taking advantage of the more automated process, and iteratively making the defect feedback and adjustment lifecycle, short and responsive, and repeating as necessary. Bit of a warning here, though, just again from my experience. If you're working closely with the agents that are going to be involved in this automated process, then it tends to be that the emphasis is on processing valid ticket data. So be sure to include a suite of erroneous data when you do develop your test plan. Once the testing has been completed, then we're prepared for the new process to be released. I would go through the process of completing the process description documentation, the training of the teams that will use the new process, if necessary, notify and educate the end users. And finally, with great fanfare, we would transition to the new service. The new, now more automated process live would want to ensure that it is properly maintained. As with any process, automated or no, a suitable role should take ownership of the process. And that would normally be the team lead of the agents operating that process. Additionally, key performance indicators for process efficiencies and effectiveness should be identified to evaluate the success of the automation. These KPIs should be run periodically and reported against to demonstrate improvement and inform future automations. And of course, we've got to be realistic. There will be changes in the environment in which the process operates, and so small remedial actions will be required to tweak the process. Okay, just as I deal with a lot of customers that talk about automation, and I wanted to just illustrate some of the common examples of automation that the customers that I deal with ask about. So the onboarding of new starters, the processing of leavers, requests for new equipment, access requests, and the ITIL conformant change management process. Right then, so what I like to do now is just to give I guess an example, a case study, an example of recent experience that I've worked through on automating processes. So I've been working with a large data center services provider, and naturally they have strict controls in place for their end users accessing their data halls and server cabinets. When the end user needs access to their server racks, they submit a request. They used to submit a request in as a Word document with up to 5 visit events per request. The agents within their Access admin team registered that request, assigned a unique ID to each visit event, and emailed the visit event details to the visitors. Additionally, the gate guards and receptionists would be emailed on a daily basis so that they would know what visits would be expected that day. It took a couple of interviews to get an understanding of the process as it is, and then it was documented really rather simply. During the interview sessions, I also understood the different stakeholders' requirements, and so there were multiple perspectives of any new process for what they were looking for. The team leader of the Access admin team wanted a more automated process to speed up the issuing of the UIDs. The management wanted to increase the use of a self-service portal, so something actually slightly tangential to the core requirements. They wanted to encourage the use of a self-service portal since they were introducing environmental sensors dashboards that will be published through that self-service. But in this situation here, the perspectives did not conflict, so I was able to go on to design a more automated process. The new process would use submission through the self-service portal. Since the self-service portal submission was really straightforward, it didn't take a huge amount of time, I proposed that we did away with this whole idea of bundling up to 5 visit events into a single request, and instead we had individual visit requests, thus simplifying the relationships within the service desk tool. When each submission was made, the UID would be automatically generated through a business rule. Those UIDs would then be included in an automatic email that would be sent to the visitor. Against each visit event would be recorded a start time and date, and the visit event would then be automatically included in a report that would be sent to the gate guard and receptionists per day so that they knew what visits they could be expected. So the proposed new process was considered by the customer against the other options and was ultimately signed off. In fact, the only other option that was proposed as a part of its business case was the do nothing, and it was pretty obvious that there were some improvements in it in automated process, so it was agreed to do. The elements of the process that were built out then, so we configured the visit request fields within the service desk tool and the visit request attributes. We designed some of the email templates and the gate guard report. We built the business rules to automate the UID sending, and also business rules to send the emails to the visitors. So that was a few business rules that were required there. Of course, we did need to do a little bit of additional work on the self-service portal, and there's a little bit of data we needed to import as well. We already had the requesters and some of the data center resources included in there, but we needed to for completeness sake, include the visitors that were authorized to be able to access these data halls, so that they could be selected rather than typed in freehand. So I worked with the team lead to ensure that the new process was fit for purpose, and then I had a colleague of mine attempt to break the process by submitting erroneous visitor requests. With the user acceptance testing signed off, I was able to complete the documentation and the system configuration, and the team lead conducted the required training to the other Access admins, but also to the training delivered to the gate guards and receptionists. And there was a notification that was sent out to the requesters that the method of submitting these requests would be changing. The new process was then applied to the production environment, and the new process went live, which was obviously great. After a warranty period, the team leader assumed ownership of the process and went around sending periodically a satisfaction survey to, first of all, her own team, and also the other teams, the guards, the receptionists, and also those users of the self-service portal. By so doing, we were obviously gathering feedback for possible immediate and also long-term improvements. So this was a relatively straightforward and simple example, I guess, but hopefully you were able to follow there that I was applying some of the business analysis concepts, I spent a bit of time setting up the automation in the key areas, in particular business rules within the service desk, and then of course I got involved in some of the wash-up activities. Okay, well, many thanks for listening to this webinar. I hope you found it useful. We've been covered a number of areas today. Really the establishment of processes, the areas of automation that lend themselves really to automation, but also the process in which the automation exists. Before I hand over to Zoe and David, I wanted to let everyone know that if you would like to learn some more, we do have a blog available on our website entitled 5 Steps to Service Automation Success, and really just wanted to very briefly call out to say it's very easy to access, no registration required or anything like that. If you just go to the Vivantio website and click on blogs, you'll find it filed away in there. Okay, well, look, many thanks for your time, and if I can pass back to David and Zoe.
Brilliant, thank you very much indeed, Quentin. Quite comprehensive there. I think you'd agree, everybody, on some approaches to this very significant change in the way that we will be creating services as we move into the next generation, I think, of service desk. So very great, thank you, Quentin. Some really interesting stuff there. So I'm wondering if we've got any questions, or what type of questions we might have. Have we got any questions from the listeners?
Hello, yeah. So I have got one popped up here, which is about how long it takes to implement process automation. Now that's all we've got, so it's quite a broad question, obviously. So what do you think about that?
Okay, well, if I can kind of leap in on that one, I guess the obvious answer is, how long is a piece of string? It will clearly vary from process to process, and the more complex, the longer it will take. The more people involved, the longer it will take. But I guess it just occurred to me as you were asking that question. So, in the example that I gave, the data center services provider, I think all in all, it was probably a couple of months, with really just 5 or so consultancy days involved in the development of that process. So it gives you kind of having explored that one in a little bit of detail, gives you a kind of a ballpark figure. Obviously, the more complex processes would take longer, and simpler processes might be simply, it might be an email to the approver, it could be a little bit of testing and then rolled out in a matter of a day or so.
Thank you, Quentin. Do you know, when I go into organizations, I think much of the feedback we get around automation is sort of the veil being lifted, if you like, from the potential of automating services. When you deal with customers, when you have these first interactions, do you tend to get, oh, right, get it, oh, right, we can do all this then? Do you get that sort of rolling sort of understanding? Do organizations sort of wake up to, wow, this could actually change the way that we operate? Often, people, the customers that I deal with, kind of go in with an understanding that there can be some benefits, and so there is quite a high level of expectation actually out of automation. So it's less a case of it's a surprise, more that they're going, there's a real business need for this automation, and they come to me with that need. So I would flip it around slightly and say that there is quite a high level of expectation in terms of automation. Interesting. Zoe, if we do get any other more questions, just let me know. I think we'll just maybe...
I've literally, just as you said that, seen 2 pop in.
No, good. Thank you.
So let me see. So there was a question from Gurjit who's asking, what were the biggest challenges when interviewing users to get a picture of the current processes?
Actually touching on something that I guess was speaking with David, there can be some preconceptions, and so once again, going back to this case study, when I was dealing with this particular customer, they were very fixed on this idea of having 5 events per request. But then when we looked at it in some detail, it really offered little value, and so simplifying the service desk solution really was a better way to go forward. But having said that, I've got to go into these interviews with a very, very open mind, and so it does often take a couple of swings at it, depending on the I guess for complexity of a process, there might be more than a couple, but to go in there to get the initial kind of impact, we get a feel for it, and then go away, give a little bit of careful thought, and then come back to it and say, okay, well, let's just explore these areas in a little bit more detail. And in so doing, really get to the nub of the issue, or the nub of what benefits can be enhanced, can be realised through automation.
And that's a really interesting process, no doubt, because you're actually playing through a continuous service improvement thing, even if you don't follow up by automating stuff. You're actually getting people together to talk about the process, and maybe sort of potentially taking away some of the less the less meaningful parts of a process. I'm assuming, yeah. So you're actually, although we're automating, we're actually putting CSI stuff in there on process as well.
Oh, absolutely, and yeah, falling back to you could inform on the KPIs and metrics that we'd want to then apply to the broader process, and so yeah, these kind of discussions are really quite a healthy thing to have on any process, on a periodic basis. I completely agree. So it does, yeah, absolutely fit in with the CSI.
Yeah, really interesting actually. So any more questions?
Yeah, and we've got two more. So I don't know, Dave, if you'd like to do one or two more before we have to sort of finish up. But so the next one is from Alexander, and he's asking, from implementations that you've completed in terms of automation, so I think, Quentin, this one's for you, which have you found to provide the most immediate satisfaction?
Immediate value as well, yes, no, absolutely. Yeah, well, I kind of touched on those in that list of common items. So automating joiners to an organization, automating levers, so as assets are collected, etc. Actually, to be honest, I think that joiners are probably the more common one to realise value. I have a particular preference for change management. I guess my background, making that into a virtual cab or some other methods of automating that systematic process. I do like to get involved with, but yeah, equipment requests. I think out of all of them, I think if I take a step back, as much as I do like change management, I've got to say that probably new starters, where we have to coordinate activity with payroll, HR, as well as the IT services being enabled. If we can automate elements of that, if we can make that as seamless as possible, then that really does showcase the IT department.
Good, yeah.
Just seen a message pop up from Alexander saying thank you for that. So
yeah, cool.
Should we do one more, Dave?
Yeah, please. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. Thank you.
So this one says, what would be the best way to demonstrate business value when you can't always necessarily show the monetary value? So through process automation.
Do you want to take that one, David? Or
by all means, yeah, by all means.
Sorry, so could you just ask that one again?
Yeah, so what would be the best way to demonstrate business value through process automation, as you can't always show the monetary value?
Yeah, okay, well, I guess the obvious one is service quality metrics. So if you are measuring your customer satisfaction, if you're measuring the perhaps even just the volume of tickets coming through your service desk solution, but certainly if you're measuring your SLAs, the SLAs is the obvious one, then you would expect to see some improvement in those metrics. That, of course, then kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, could feed into the CSI process, and then might drive up more, more challenging SLA targets, but overall, yeah, we would expect to see, I guess cost savings in terms of automation. Could be that we'll be able to outsource or smart source some elements of a particular process, or insource elements of a process, but that's really for very much larger automating processes. More generally, what we'd expect to see is levels of customer satisfaction and response rates.
It's a really interesting question. Certainly when I've seen organizations try to pull from an ROI, try to pull a value from it. So if you look at the savings, the efficiency savings in time and effort in an organization, benchmark a service now. If you look at your average handling time, so life cycle, now and after, you can certainly track that back to an overall cost and the cost of handling through that life cycle. And you can even get benchmarking data to see where you stand then, international stuff as well. So there are ways to do it. I think it's just about being clever and understanding the efficiency savings is actually cost. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good. Excellent. Well, that's fantastic. So if we've got any more questions pop up, I'm hoping we'll have the ability maybe to answer them in the longer term and maybe post them back to the attendees. Guys, it's been great. Thank you very much indeed. It pretty much wraps up today. I'd like to thank Quentin McPhee from Vivantio for joining us today. Thank you very much indeed, Quentin. And I'd like to thank Zoe for managing today's webinar as well. And finally, thank you, our listeners, for joining us today. I hope you've had a fresh perspective and areas to consider as you explore service automation. Good luck to everyone, and we'll see you again very soon. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you.